with us today?
You have Nicholas with you.
Well, that's what I was hoping. How you doing, Nicholas?
Oh, I'm doing fine.
Well, we're just getting started here, so let me put a plug in again for our sponsor, and we'll pray and try to pick up where we were talking last week, Nicholas.
Okay.
Unconfused is sponsored by Outdoor Needs. You just heard that commercial for Butch and Leona Weber's company. Give Butch a call, 785-7557. If you need to get some stuff done in your house or business, trees, decks, outdoor entertaining areas, all that kind of stuff, carports, you name it, he can pretty much do it. Also fireplace inserts, fireplace servicing, cleaning your chimney, all that kind of stuff. This is the time of the year you definitely want to get that done. 785-7557. And again, Butch is a member out of our church, and most of the folks come out here on the program, at least that are here in the studio, they're almost always folks from our church, and so this is a local church ministry, and we enjoy doing this, and I hope it's encouraging to folks out there. It may be challenging. This is going to be kind of a challenging discussion today. It's a little hard to follow, I think, some of this, but we're going to do our best to get it to where it's understandable for people, because again, sometimes you get talking about charts and end time things, it's almost easier to draw it out, but we can't do that because we're on the radio, so we have to kind of draw a picture with our words. So hopefully me and Nicholas can do that today. And like we talked about last week, we don't agree on a lot of this stuff, but there's a whole lot of stuff more that we do agree on. So this is not a contentious discussion, but it is a discussion, again, I think is important to have, and this is what all of us are supposed to be doing as Christians. We're supposed to study to show ourselves approved unto God, and we need to rightly divide the word of truth. We need to hold fast that which is good, and you know what, if it doesn't line up with what we believe, we need to prove it out, and if we find out that in the process of that we're wrong, then we need to change what we believe. I've had to do it before. I'm sure I'll do it again one of these days before the Lord returns. And so, anyway, none of us has it all figured out. And that's kind of why this program is titled the way it is, Unconfused. We're just praying and trusting God to unconfuse us on anything that we're confused about on a given point in time in our lives. So, Catherine, give that number for texting. We can take text throughout the show and Facebook comments. We're up live on Facebook, and but we've obviously got the phone line tied up here. So what's that text number?
Number is 806-745-5800.
Alrighty, and I'm going to pray, and then Nicholas, I'm going to let you kind of, again, I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to lay out what you think is the most important difference and point that you want to make, and whether it's new from last week, or if you want to review part of that, I'll leave it up to you there. But I'm going to kind of put the timer on you for 5 minutes, because once I get talking, it's going to go back and forth, and I know it's hard to really defend everything in this short a period of time, and so I want to give you the time, but also want to have a discussion with it. So
yes, sir.
So let me pray and all let you get going here. Lord, thank you again for privilege to do this. Let your word go forth today with clarity. And Lord, obviously there's things we don't agree on here between me and Nicholas. And so, Lord, I pray you just help people to see what's true. Not me being right or him being right, but Lord, we just want you to be right. And you are right always. And so we just need to get on the right side of truth. And so open up our understanding to that today. If there's folks out there that are not saved, Lord, let this conversation be such that even through the course of it, Lord, they might see their need for Christ before it's eternally too late. And so just thank you ahead of time for a good program. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Okay. Last week, I showed everyone how I believe that the 2 Thessalonians 2 prophecy of the great apostasy and the man of sin was fulfilled in history, and I believe I did it adequately from the Scripture so that people could understand how I come to that conclusion through Scripture and through history. And so we started to touch on Daniel's 70th week a little bit during our following discussion. So I wanted to zero in on that. Now, the historicist interpretation holds that the 70 weeks are contiguous and therefore completely fulfilled in the first century. Now, I used to I used to believe in the futurist gap view without really understanding it, because I just accepted what I was taught by men who surely understood the Bible better than I did. Okay? But then I started teaching the Bible, and have been since about 1996. And in my study, I came to understand that God would hold me to a very high standard, and I could even be punished for false teaching. And there's several warnings against adding to and taking away from the Scripture. So I thought it was very important that I be able to pull what I was teaching directly out of the Scripture and find it in as explicit terms as I could in the Scripture. So when it came to the prophetic parts of the Scripture, I started to search the Scripture for the gap that was in the Daniel 70th week that I believed in. So I started to investigate the idea because I couldn't find it. I couldn't find an explicit gap. I found plenty of conjecture and some of the same things that you mentioned last week, like where Jesus got up and he said, "This day is this prophecy fulfilled in your ears." So I went and I opened up, the Scripture there, and I looked where he was teaching, and surely enough, there was something that was fulfilled that day, because Jesus wouldn't lie. What he said was the truth. And there were things that followed that in the same text that may be construed as happening maybe perhaps 2,000 years in the future or more from when Jesus said that. But I needed something more explicit, because that was good conjecture to support what I believe. But there was a problem with the comparison there. The comparison I found was, for me, for my standard, I found it to be faulty, because what is expressed in the Daniel 70 weeks prophecy is 70 weeks are determined. In the other prophecy where Jesus quoted from, there was no time frame given for those prophecies to happen. So there was no insertion of any gap or anything necessary, because there was no time frame to be broken up. Things were just listed that would happen or were happening right then, as Jesus expressed when he said, "This day is this fulfilled in your." But obviously, some of the other parts of that text could be construed and are construed as of happening in the far future from when Jesus was standing there. But the comparison with something where a time frame is given, I needed more, and I simply could not find more. So I started to investigate the idea that the 70 weeks are contiguous, and to my surprise, I had to admit that the literal view was absolutely viable, and to this day, I've not been able to exclude it by Scripture alone. Because that's what I do. When I get an idea or someone proposes something to me, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to exclude it by Scripture. If I can exclude it, then I can dump it, if you get my meaning.
Yeah.
But I could not exclude it. So I felt I needed to look at the futurist teaching, the best futurist teaching that I could find, because I certainly don't want to be unpopular and wrong at the same time. Because I have to admit, the popular view is a futurist one that developed about the middle of the 19th century and has taken the church by storm ever since that day. Okay? So that is popular, but so I didn't want to be wrong and unpopular at the same time. So, trying to handle this mystery, I went straight to Chuck Missler. You've heard of him.
No, I'm not. No.
Okay, well, he's supposed to be like one of the best on this topic. And even Chuck Missler admits that upon reading the text, and I would quote him, he said, quote, "We would naturally think that the 70 weeks are contiguous, one right after the other, and they are," unquote. But then he digresses and says, quote, "except for the interval between the 69th and the 70th weeks. That's not conjecture," he says. It's expressed in the text. But I could find it expressed in the text nowhere Okay. Let me see. My next thought here.
Well, let me stop you there because that's been over 5 minutes, actually, almost 6. So
Okay.
time flies. That's what I'm saying. But here's how I got to get in there because we're in Daniel 9. Okay. Let me try to let me do this because I'm trying to review some of this for people without just going through quicksand here. The prophecy in Daniel 9, verse 24 to 27 is what we're talking about.
Correct.
And again, for people listening out there, 70 weeks. You and I agree that a week in the context is a week of years, correct?
That's settled, yeah.
Yeah, okay, all right. So what that means, if you're out there listening, that means that a week is 7 years. So 70 of those is going to be 490 years. And so one way or the other, we believe there's 490 literal years that are being talked about here. In verse 25, okay, let's focus on verse 25 here, then in Daniel 9. When does the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem, let's see if we're on the same page with that. When did that happen historically?
Well, that would be dated about 458 BCE.
Well, no, what event, though, are you using?
Oh, the decree to rebuild, Artaxerxes.
Okay, Nehemiah chapter 2. Okay, so we're on the same page there. So a pagan, the most powerful Gentile leader in the world at that day, started this prophecy.
Well, one thing I think we agree on is that when you add the first two divisions together, they add up to 69 weeks.
Yeah.
There's no gap between the 7 weeks and the 3 score and 2 weeks.
No, and I agree there. That's what I'm saying. So in that verse, I agree with that. So this is where we differ, I'm pretty sure. Where then that next segment of time ends, which ends, and again, it's a vague statement because it doesn't qualify what exactly is the event in the life of the Messiah, which we agree is Christ, obviously, Jesus Christ, the Lord Jesus Christ, at his first coming. But what is the event, and this is where you and me differ, what is the event where that 483-year period, or, 7 weeks, 3 score and 2 weeks, 69 weeks, 483 years, beginning with Artaxerxes' decree in Nehemiah 2, what is the event that ends that according to your interpretation?
Yeah. Well, the difficulty is that we don't really have exact dating for those BCE events.
No, not the dates. I mean, what is the event?
Well, yeah. But that's part of my why we have a differing. We could have a difference in where the time ended, the 69 weeks ended. But it says, unto Messiah the Prince.
Right, vague. It's a vague statement.
The question for me, that's about as exact as it gets, because that's all it says is unto Messiah the Prince. So how do we determine what unto the Messiah the Prince is? And for me, that would be when Jesus showed up at the Jordan River baptism. There are many things that lead me to believe that this is the event that the scripture was talking about. Number one, Luke, at that time, stated that Jesus began to be 30 years old. He was in his 30th year. He reached the age to qualify for the position of a high priest at that age. Number two, the Father bore witness. The Holy Spirit bore witness. John the Baptist bore witness. And the apostles, or those disciples that were looking for him, also bore witness. We have found the Messiah, they said. So that would be the first appearance of Jesus in his role as Messiah, which he could not even qualify for, because the Messiah is a priestly role, of course, after the order of Melchizedek, but still, he reached the age of majority to qualify as a priest according to law at 30 years old.
Okay, let me stop you there. Okay, so which I would agree with there. He had to have been 30, and so for argument's sake, right, I think we're at least in a ballpark here, because there's your kind of case to be made for the up unto Messiah the Prince, we're again talking about that specific phrase in Daniel 9:25. You're interpreting it, but not, you're saying that you can't prove it. You're being honest, beyond a shadow of a doubt. And I'm saying the same with my interpretation. I'll say the same thing, and I'll give a passage here. Let me read it out of Luke that supports 3+ years, because we don't know exactly how long Jesus' earthly ministry was. But I'm saying that it's Luke 19 on what people commonly refer to as Palm Sunday. And the reason why is several reasons. It's probably one of the most prophesied specific events in Jesus' life from the Old Testament. It's prophesied in and again, it's a vague prophecy, but it's clearly prophesied in Genesis 49. It's prophesied, I believe, in Daniel 9, because that's what I think this is pointing to. It's prophesied in Psalm 118. Hosanna, blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord, is a quote from Psalm 118. Save now is what it says there. Okay, the King coming in, and also in Zechariah chapter 9, I believe it is, verse 9. So there's at least, those are the ones off the top of my head I know of, at least, I believe, 4 places, if you include Daniel 9, to prophesy of this event, which would then be very supportive, because I can't think of any events that specifically prophesied about the baptism of Jesus, other than John the Baptist talking about it with Jesus. So here's where Jesus comes in then, Luke 19. I'm not going to read all of it, but it begins back in verse 28. You read down through there. Verse 38, that's when the people say, blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. There's a direct quote of Psalm 118. And then Jesus says this in verse 41, and when he was, the text says this, and when he was come near and beheld the city, and it's interesting, the city, because the prophecy in Daniel 9 is dealing with the holy city, okay, he wept over it, it says, saying, if thou hadst known, even thou at least in this thy day. So there's something about that day that's, where Jesus is saying, this is your day, okay, it's thy day. The things which belong unto thy peace, which, again, is what really...
Well, and then he goes on to prophesy the destruction.
The destruction of the city there, which is also in the context there in Daniel 9 in verse 26. So I think there's a lot more scripture to back up, and that's why I've landed on this over the years, to show that day, right there, just a couple of days before Jesus' crucifixion, is when the first 69 weeks of Daniel was fulfilled. I think it began when Artaxerxes gave the decree, and I believe the city was rebuilt in 49 years, and then I believe 300 or 434 years after that, or a total of 483 years from Nehemiah's day all the way up to this time here. I believe it was this day here in Luke 19.
Okay. Well, yeah, I believe that too, because I was taught that myself. But if I go with the simple reading of the text, it simply says, unto Messiah, the Prince, the 69 weeks. But what you're saying is that he actually showed up in the middle of the 69th week.
No, I'm not saying.
He was the Messiah before that day.
No.
He was the Messiah before the day that you talk about there in Luke 19:42.
Well, he was
the Messiah before
he was the Messiah in eternity past, if you want to look at it that way. I mean, because he is...
Well, no, I'm not looking at it. I'm looking at the physical in the ground when he would, unto Messiah the Prince, when he showed up. Because that's basically, the way I read it is he simply showed up. And what I want to do is outline a little scenario of Daniel's 70th week as history. Okay? If you want to give me a few minutes.
Sure, yeah, go ahead, take a few more minutes to do that.
Okay, of course, now Andrew and Simon and Philip and Nathaniel, they were all looking for the Messiah for some reason. And I believe it's because they were counting on the prophecy. And they said, we have found the Messiah. This is what they said before they became his disciples.
Well, they don't use the word Messiah, they say Christ.
Yes, they do. John 1:41. We have found the Messiah.
Okay, but I mean, okay, I'm sorry, I'm talking about later on, you're right, okay. I'm talking about later on, there's only one place, I believe, only one or two places.
And then Philip in John 1:45 says that we have found him of whom Moses and the law and the prophets did write. So Andrew says to Simon, we have found the Messiah. And this is when Jesus first appeared. Okay? And so today people are interested in prophecy. And 2,000 years ago, there were people like Andrew, Simon, Philip, and Nathaniel. They were also interested in prophecy. Now imagine being in their shoes at a time about 483 years into Daniel's 70 weeks prophecy. They know the history of the people, how the temple and the city were restored exactly as Daniel the prophet foretold. They recognize that it is near the end or about the end of the 69th week, and know the Messiah is about to step onto the scene. Like Andrew and Philip, we would be actively seeking him if we were there. And once we found him, would it ever enter our mind that the 70th week would not follow the 69th? The gap theory that I used to believe in would not be developed nor perfected for some 1,500 to 1,900 years in the future. Now, Andrew, Simon, Philip, Nathaniel, and if I was living in that time, I would think that I would have no doubt that the period of time I was living in was the 70th week. And another question I had to ask is, if the 70th week is in the future, what was the week that followed the 69th?
Okay, all right, well, just stop right there. Let me, because you know, we get to this quite a bit there. Let me camp on this. By the way, and I believe, and I think you believe the same thing too, all throughout history, people, there was this thing of progressive revelation, and just because somebody didn't understand or thought in the first century that, hey, this is all going to happen consecutively, I mean, that in itself doesn't prove anything one way or the other, because there's certain things, you know, people can't understand until they've happened. And so, you know, and back to this consecutive aspect here. Let's go back to Daniel 9 then, okay? Because here's where I'm getting stuck on, where I don't see that you're really doing the same thing again. Because verse 25 ends, you're saying then that Daniel 9:25, when it says, unto the Messiah the Prince, that it's going to be, you know, this 483-year period. And so then you're saying that's his baptism, correct?
Yeah, that's when he appeared as Messiah. That was when he actually qualified for the position of the high priest Messiah.
Okay, all right. But, all right, so here's the thing. So then, walk us through verse 27, when it says, he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And we're skipping verse 26 for a minute, okay? But verse 27, when does that begin, that he confirms the covenant with many for 1 week?
Well, and according to Malachi, where Malachi states that the Lord whom ye seek shall suddenly come to his temple, even the messenger of the covenant. So he was the messenger of the covenant, and he confirmed the covenant with many for 1 week, and he began there after the Jordan River baptism. He began his 7-year ministry.
So you're saying then that
exclusively to the Hebrew Jewish people.
Okay, so you're saying though that it began then right there that same year.
That's right.
Okay, all right. So now, all right. So then let's look at the 3.5-year point, halfway through that, in the midst of the week, Daniel 9:27. What is fulfilling that, where he says, in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease? What is that a reference to? What event?
Okay. In the midst of the week, Jesus was crucified, and on the cross, when he said, it is finished, and there was a great earthquake, and the veil in the temple was rent from top to bottom. He caused the sacrifice and oblation to cease by the sacrifice of himself. And if you go to Hebrews, it confirms that the sacrifice of bulls and goats and those kinds of things were no longer any use or validity, because Jesus now has made the once for all sacrifice.
Okay, yeah, and I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that.
He did.
Principle.
Put an end to the sacrifice and oblation in the midst of the week by the sacrifice of himself.
Okay, but hold on. All right, now this is where I'm really struggling to follow this in a chronological way here. In Matthew 24, when Jesus, in the context of, them asking, the disciples asking him about the signs of his coming and the end of the world, and Jesus talks about the gospel being preached, in verse 14, he says, and the gospel of the kingdom shall be preached unto all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. All right, now, what is that a reference to? Because I've only ever seen one place that can be referring to, and that's Daniel 9:27, that in the midst of the week part.
Well, yeah.
So how does that?
After.
Okay. So
now the way I would look at this, first I looked and it says spoken of by Daniel the prophet. So I looked in all the places where Daniel the prophet speaks of an abomination of desolation or something like this, and it's always about a wrong sacrifice being offered. That's what the abomination that maketh desolate is. It's a wrong sacrifice being offered. Okay? After Jesus offered up his life for our sin, of course, the priests in the temple, they went, they repaired the damage, they repaired the veil in the temple, and then they began to carry on animal sacrifice again.
So you're saying that's the abomination of desolation?
Yeah, that's an abomination that maketh desolate. It's a wrong sacrifice. Now, it wasn't wrong before Christ, because it was according to the law. But after Christ offered his own self once for all, he put an end to the sacrifice of oblation by the sacrifice of himself. So now that sacrifice, after they repaired the veil in the temple, after he put an end to it, it becomes a standing practice in the temple and an abomination.
Okay, so so you don't think that's a reference to an individual? When ye shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand, you don't think that's a reference to an individual standing in the temple, in the holy place?
Well, that may be an abomination, but I don't believe that that's a reference to that.
Okay,
but that's a point we really can't nail down.
Well, I mean, other than the fact that I'm just trying again, though, you're saying that Jesus, when he prophesied that on, this is probably Tuesday.
Well, he gave other signs to go along with it.
Well, okay, but I'm saying this is
asked about my armies.
Well, this is Tuesday. He's crucified the next day, and so this is a prophecy about the next day when he's going to be on the cross.
The next day they had to repair the temple first before they could carry on. So I doubt that they were making any sacrifices the very next day.
Well, within a few days, though, you're saying that that's within a few days after his crucifixion.
Yes.
Okay, then
it's an unacceptable sacrifice to God.
Then you're saying that then right after that, go down a couple of verses, verse 19. Well, let's read consecutively here. Verse 16 here, Matthew 24. Then, okay, so once that first sacrifice was made, days after the crucifixion of Christ, then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop go, not come down to take anything out of his house. Neither let him which is in the field turn back to take his clothes, and woe to them that are a child, and them that give suck in those days, which is just a couple of days after he prophesies this.
Well, hold on.
But pray ye that your flight be not in winter, neither on the Sabbath day, for then shall be Great Tribulation. So you're saying that that's when that Great Tribulation began then at that point?
Well, that would begin the last 40 years countdown to 70 AD when the total destruction. These are things that...
Well, what about the 3.5 years? Because we only have 3.5 years in Daniel's prophecy left, according to your interpretation of it there.
We have 3.5 years for the gospel to be exclusively to the Jewish people. Okay?
So that's that's that time where Jesus says, "Then shall be great tribulation, such." I don't have this memorized here. So, for then shall be great tribulation. That next 3.5 years, up to the first part of the book of Acts, then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. So, well,
you're assuming that all that's going to happen in 3.5 years. I'm saying that it's going to happen in 40 years, because there's nothing in the text that restricts that to a 3.5 year period.
But your whole thing is trying to make all of this go consecutively from Nehemiah chapter 2.
Everything in the 70 weeks, the 70 weeks are consecutive. Everything that has to happen within the 70 weeks happens within the 70 weeks in history.
Well,
some of the things happen after the 69th week, but they don't necessarily and obviously did not happen, like the desolation and destruction of Jerusalem.
Yeah, that didn't happen until 70 AD. Yeah, well, that didn't happen until 70 AD, right, which is my whole point of
it. It only says that those things happen after the 3.2 weeks. Not that they happen within.
No, and I agree with that. That's my whole thing, too. So we at least see that back in Daniel 9. I think my interpretation, does go completely chronological, because I believe that it ends, that 69 weeks ends on Palm Sunday, and I believe verse 26 shows after that Jesus is crucified, and then after that Jerusalem's destroyed, okay, and then the next verse 27, after that last week is going to take place. And so I'm actually going through Daniel 9, 24, 25, 26, 27 consecutively. But the reason I come up with a gap is not just arbitrarily, it's because of verse 26, where in my opinion, I'm forced to move verse 27 past the events of verse 26. Even if you want to say it's the Messiah making the covenant with many for 1 week, the Lord making a covenant, the same thing. Then that's going to be very vague and hard to nail down. And so the key event that I'm obviously looking forward, which again, we'll have to bring this up, talk about it next week. We can do this one more week here. But I know that you believe that the temple, we already kind of brought that up a little bit, in Revelation is not talking about a literal temple in the future. It's talking about the church. And so we'll have to kind of start with that next time. But I just think that it's clear that the temple is going to be rebuilt, and once that takes place, there's going to be an abomination of desolation, because I think that's what 2 Thessalonians 2 is referring to. So we got to stop there for today, Nicholas. All right, folks, okay. Please stay unconfused.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.